Hi, I'm Jennifer Potter, Executive Director of Be Well Texas. Too many people are struggling alone these days, and alcohol and drug deaths are increasing. We started Be Well Texas to offer high-quality, science-based addiction treatment and recovery services anywhere, virtually or in person. In many cases, there is no cost for treatment or medications if you don't have insurance. Really. Welcome to Be Well Texas. We're glad you're here. Visit bewelltexas.org.
Everyone, welcome to episode 260 of the Alamo Audible Podcast, brought to you by the Dave Campbell Texas Football Republic of Football Podcast Network. Whew, it's always a mouthful, getting all the syllables out. This is your host, Jared Kalmus, joined as always by my co-host, Adrian Bermudez. Adrian, it's good to be back to recap a win. We weren't sure when we were going to get another one of these, and a pretty convincing win for the Roadrunners against the FAU Owls.
Convincing indeed, Jared. UTSA goes out and gets a 14-point victory over FAU on homecoming day, outgaining the Owls on the day by way of total offense, 485 total yards for UTSA to just 203 for FAU. Really a fantastic showing from the Roadrunners. We had our mistakes, but the Roadrunners got better as that game went on and had a fantastic fourth quarter together to solidify the win. And I was just really impressed all around because I did not think that they were going to have that performance, a winning performance, the week after just a complete implosion against Rice. I was not faithful that was going to happen at all on Saturday. So yeah, big ups to the locker room culture for having some resolve, for proving us wrong, going out there and getting the dub. I was extremely impressed and very, very happy with them.
Yep, same here. That locker room was in much better shape, obviously, than we thought. You know, Coach Traylor talking about it, thought it was just coach speak and just trying to keep the guys' spirits up, but it had to have been true because we saw a team that faced a lot of
adversity issues.
Adversity, thank you. A lot of adversity. It showed resiliency in spite of that, right? So really impressive stuff. And before we completely break down this game, we did get some really good voicemails at our Google Voice number. So I want to play the first voicemail for you guys. I think kind of sets the scene for the game quite a little bit.
Hey guys, Nate here. Calling a couple of hours after the game ended. And overall, I thought it was pretty good. I thought the play calling was a bit more diverse than usual. I mean, we weren't just throwing it to the flats or anything like that. We were actually using the middle of the field, which I don't think we've done quite often this year, to be honest. And thought McCown is progressing right in front of our eyes. You know, it sounds a little cheesy, but I mean, he's using his legs more, and he's, I think, making better decisions. I think just getting the ability to make those deep throws will come along with his experience. So I think overall, after the first quarter, our offense kind of buckled down and did really good. And the last thing I want to point out is I think our defensive line next year is going to be just fine. I mean, having Buxton in, having Johnny Bowens come back, John Jones there, it's going to be kind of more of a reload rather than a rebuild next year. And if they do bring in some other transfers, I think that position will be just fine. All right, that's all I got. Later, guys.
A lot to take away from that, Jared. He hit on a lot of good points. Hit on a lot of really good points.
Yeah, shout out to Nate. That's great. That's the exact kind of voicemail I think that we want to get from the listeners. So thank you, Nate. And keep in mind, don't forget to add 210-660-8259 to your contacts on your phone so you can hit us up at any time with a voicemail or a text. So thanks, Nate. And, you know, I thought he made a really good point about the offense kind of buckling down after that first quarter. I think Owen may have thrown one or two picks in the second quarter as well, but over the span of the game, I mean, he definitely settled in. We saw the offense start to click quite a bit, but that running game never really developed. That was like the one thing that's like really holding me back from really being super, super ecstatic with this performance because they found a way to win without it. but you're not going to be able to do that week in and week out, right?
Yeah, so 145 yards rushing on the day, but number feels like more than what you saw whenever you
Yeah.
were actually watching the game. There wasn't significant run plays or critical run plays, minus a couple of things that I think Robert Henry maybe had one or two significant carries, and of course Brandon High had a couple of significant carries, but both had well over 20-yard runs from each of them. But I think throughout the game, like the way that you want to be leaning on the run game in this offense with a new starting quarterback his first season, you want to have a much more solid, dependable run game, especially on like those first and second downs that you can really lean on and getting you closer to the sticks. It's taking a lot of that pressure off of Owen McCown. We haven't seen it. We've seen like a slew of running backs through the beginning of this season, all through the first 6 weeks, or through the first 4 weeks. We're playing 6 running backs at a time, 5 running backs each single game. Now we're starting to see it kind of concentrate to the main ball carriers. But like to the naked eye test, it very, very clearly seems that Robert Henry and Brandon High are the best running backs on this roster right now. They're playing the best this season, at least. And so they should be getting the lion's share of the carries. For Brandon High to have under 10, I think it's criminal. But they should absolutely be getting the majority of the carries. Kavorian Barnes, I understand he's a single digit guy. You love him. He's not getting you the yardage this year. So I think you gotta pivot a little bit of those carries. Besides the turnovers, Jared, there's 3 on the day. There's a lost fumble and there's 2 interceptions from Owen McCown. If you remove that from the offensive stat sheet, it really is incredible what the UTSA offense was able to get done. 485 total yards on the day. They were 12 for 20 on their third down conversions, 4 for 4 in the red zone. Too many of those settling for field goals. I know we want to see more touchdowns at the end of drives. I think we're getting there. 35 minutes of offensive ball possession on the day. It's really salty stuff that we saw from the UTSA offense. Definitely their best game of the year by far, and that goes to show itself in the point output. Right, 38 points on the day felt like the old high scoring offense of UTSA's yesteryear. Jared.
Yeah, and I think if this plays on both sides of the ball, but for better or worse, it was a forced youth movement for this whole roster. I mean, especially in that second half, every single big play, freshman, sophomore, freshman, freshman. I mean, it was kind of surreal, honestly, to see that much youth on the field contributing against a team that, I know has struggled. FAU's not had a great season, but they've got talent on that roster. They've got a really, really good coach, right? So I was pretty impressed, really, seeing guys like Jamel Hardy, obviously Owen and Brandon High have been big parts of the season. And then on the defensive side of the ball too, I mean, Owen Pee-wee, Bryce Grays, just a really, really long, Davin Martin, right? A long list of guys that have had some contributions, but just to see like that whole younger recruiting class of guys really step up and kind of take that game over was really, really cool to see and very promising for the future as well.
It sure looks like the youth has the talent, Jared. I mean, Jamel Hardy, freshman, Houston Thomas, sophomore, Patrick Overmeyer, redshirt freshman, Brandon High Jr., freshman, Owen McCown, sophomore, like all that offensive firepower and output that you saw, these are all underclassmen. You're going to hear me say it. Play the kids. Play the kids. We've always talked for the last couple of seasons about Jeff Traylor's like loyalty versus liability thing, because he really, really does love his guys, maybe arguably to a fault. And I think maybe this season we saw some seniority at these positions getting a lot of the snaps, whereas maybe these underclassmen should have been getting more of them, or at least a higher share of them. And maybe they weren't ready in week 1, but I think by the time UTSA is where they are now, right, halfway through the season with a losing record, you have to start playing those guys. And I would argue you probably should have started doing it a little bit earlier to see what else you have available. The talent in the underclassmen group, both offensively and defensively, is tremendous, Jared. It goes to show that Jeff Traylor does know what he's doing recruiting, because he's recruiting talent here. Play them. Damn it. play the kids. And let's see them, because 2025, you're really not going to have any of the seniors from yesteryear's Conference USA back-to-back run on your roster. So what the hell's the point? Get them ready for having a damn good 2025. Get them the snaps now. Let's get these guys seasoned.
Yeah, and I think you got to trust your evaluation and the talent level that you can still get to bowl game and play the kids at the same time, right? I think UTSA should be completely capable of doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're setting yourself up for, a much bigger run next year, right? The year after that, maybe if you keep building, things start to get pretty serious again. When you're going to start a sophomore quarterback, like I think you should go in kind of expecting to play youth elsewhere as well. But yeah, nonetheless, it's cool to see. Man, probably a lot of guys that we should focus on individually. I think Jamel Hardy, Patrick Overmeyer both made highlight reel catches, really impressive stuff. Both guys just have a special kind of athleticism to them that just really shows up on the screen when you're watching the game, right? Jamel, I think in particular, he's got like that kind of silky smoothness coming out of his cuts that like we're used to seeing from UTSA receivers of these past like 3 years or whatever. Jamel has it, man. I think he can be a really special player. Obviously needs to build some consistency and build some experience. We saw him make a catch against Rice where he was going to have the first down and ran backwards and took the first down away. I think that ended up leading to a punt or turnover on downs for the Roadrunners. So stuff like that is teachable. You'll overcome it. But when you got a guy that can go up on the fade route in the end zone and one hand snag it over a Division I cornerback, like you got to keep putting that guy in the field and let him cook, And man, he looked so good running that little rub route where he ran that quick slant over the middle of the field and took off.
So good, man. Jamel Hardy and Patrick Overmeyer with parallel stat lines: 3 receptions, 47 yards, a touchdown each. Very, very cool. And another 3 reception guy was Houston Thomas for 63 yards, who also looked really, really good running downfield. Tight ends getting it done with their hands, the young tight ends.
Jamel and Patrick got a lot of love for their, crazy touchdown catches, but I think that catch that Houston Thomas had to convert a first down, I think like in the fourth quarter into the third quarter, that was just as impressive because like he was completely draped. There was contact on the play, and we really haven't seen any of the receivers for UTSA maintain a catch through contact. Right, a lot of the drops that we've seen this year, receiver has the ball in their hands, but they take a hit and they can't complete the catch. So to see him hold on to that, impressive stuff.
Definitely so. It was the second longest pass of the day, 41 yards on that one to Houston Thomas, and then 42 was Patrick Overmeyer. So yeah, tight ends making the big deep receptions here for the Roadrunners on the day. So yeah, the room is starting to take shape. I think, it's not like super surprising that the tight ends are sort of becoming more important in the receiving game. I'm surprised we didn't see them a little bit earlier kind of have that role. Especially just like with the sort of lack of production that we've seen from the wide receivers, but it is starting to take shape. So hopefully Owen McCown a little bit more faith in his targets whenever he's throwing to him.
Yeah,
Owen McCown.
It's kind of funny. I feel like UTSA kind of got forced into playing the offense they should have been playing all year long by the wide receiver injuries.
Yes,
you know what I mean. Like,
and now we're seeing them in that small half of a game, in the small second half sample size that we have. Some of the best offensive football we've seen from the Roadrunners in 2024.
Yeah, and Owen had 340 passing yards. How many wide open receivers did he just slightly miss on the deep ball? I mean, he probably left 150 yards on the field on, Chris Carpenter getting wide open and Owen overthrows him a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It's funny. I was talking to a listener named Kevin before the game, and like all the news about all the receiver injuries was coming out, and he was like, "I'm willing to bet $50 that UTSA's receivers are going to have their best game of the season." And I think he was right. I mean, statistically, they may not have put the highest receiving number up, but just their ability to get open and create separation was the best that we've seen all year long. And then I think for the tight ends too. I mean, they were forced to throw the tight ends and use them as receivers, not just as like safety blankets and check down routes.
Without a doubt, it was the most open that we've seen our receivers. Definitely. And Owen McCown, man, he had a couple. He had those interceptions, and he had a couple of bread loaves that could have had a little more speed on him, a little more zip, but played a really, really good game. 26 for 45, 340 yards altogether, 2 touchdowns on the day to go with his 2 picks. So Owen McCown, even not playing his best, I think was really, really impressive as a quarterback. And I'm just going to keep on banging the Owen McCown drum until all of his haters
Yeah.
cease.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think he'll be doing that for years to come. He's always going to be the guy that came after Frank Harris, no matter what he does. There's no way he can match what Frank was able to accomplish at UTSA, especially because Frank was the first to do it. So
Correct.
he could get drafted, and people are still going to say, "Oh, he's not Frank Harris." You know,
Frank Harris, yeah.
I have a hard time, saying that he was amazing in this game because his 2 interceptions were really bad.
They were ugly.
The first one, he completely missed the safety. I don't think he ever saw the safety. And FAU did a good job disguising their coverage on that because that free safety came up into the box kind of. And then as the play was starting, he kind of pivoted out and shifted his coverage out to, that outer third. It was an easy pick for him. And then that second one, I think Owen just stared the receiver down a little bit too long. He's like, Chris Carpenter got open really early. I mean, he beat the receiver pretty much off the jump from the line of scrimmage. Owen should have thrown that ball immediately. And he did a good job of leading the receiver. But if you would have thrown that ball as soon as Chris became open, because you don't wait for him to be open, you got to throw it when he becomes open, when he's starting to get open, right? Correct. That's the key. That's a hard thing to do, right? That's a hard thing for a young quarterback to do. So you take those away, and I'm not going to give him really any blame on that backwards pass. We can talk about that play if you want. I don't think that was a quarterback issue on Owen's part. So, I mean, you take away those 2 interceptions, I thought he played well. It's just the same thing as always. If he's going to check down, he needs to check down quicker, right? Because he waits so long, it gives the defense plenty of time to adjust and be like, oh, there's a tight end that's uncovered. I better, go pick that guy up. So.
I do agree with you. I think that's a perfect microcosm of sort of what Owen's biggest growing pain continues to be, and that's just that he's just processing so much information right now because he is still getting it underneath his fingertips and still getting those snaps to where it becomes more routine. But you could just sort of tell, I think, coming out of the huddle, getting lined up at the line of scrimmage before the play call. I mean, you can sort of see on his face that there's so much being calibrated up there cerebrally, right? But by the time the ball gets snapped. And I think you sort of saw that same look on Frank Harris's face whenever he was in 2019, 2020. And then in the eyes, once you go into junior year and senior year and you've had those snaps on your belt, you start to see there's very calm presence that starts to come over the look of the quarterback, the appearance of the quarterback. And I can still sort of see in Owen that he's still, there's a lot that he's thinking and processing still, but week by week, it does seem to be coming a little bit easier for him. I will agree with you, Jared. The interceptions were egregious. The trick play was not at all on Owen. That was a bad play call, a bonehead play call. He had all the momentum in the world on that drive and screwed it up for no reason, essentially. But how about, I think, Owen's cojones to continue to hook that ball downfield despite the 2 interceptions, despite the scoop and score, despite having, some poor throws that he let go of earlier in the game, continued to fire that thing, man. And, we listened to the fall camp interviews. All of his teammates kept saying, Owen's a dog. Owen's a dog. Yeah. He's a dog. I think that was a little bit of a sample size of that dog and Owen, man, because he was really letting that ball fly like we hadn't quite seen against against other teams whenever we played FAU. And I loved it. I loved every moment of it. Keep letting Owen let that thing fly because, gosh, he's got a hell of an arm. Beautiful. Yeah, he threw a couple passes that were 55 yards traveling through the air. I mean, just ungodly. You didn't see that arm from Frank.
Yeah, and he had some beautiful passes that were not completed. I mean, he had one touchdown throw to Chris Carpenter where Chris kind of ran an in and out, I think it was. And, I mean, the ball perfectly right there, corner of the end zone. Defender had no chance to make the play, hit Chris right in the hands, didn't catch it, right?
Yeah, right.
It's pretty easy to see if the rest of the offense, especially the run game, really started to hold up their end of the bargain. I mean, Owen would be really hyped. Really, really hyped.
Yeah.
I mean, he led a comeback drive on the road against Rice that should have won the game. And then that ECU game, I mean, he hit receivers in the hands repeatedly in the fourth quarter that should have been, a sustained drive to go win that game on the road as well. So, kind of revisionist history to, theorize about something that didn't really happen. But, I think his ability to play with so much confidence like that stems from his comfort in that job, right? And like I think all the
Yeah.
people that are calling for Eddie Lee Marburger to come in every single time Owen makes a mistake, or slides too early, doesn't get the first down, throws a pick or whatever, because the staff has placed their trust in Owen, he's able to play more free and to continue taking those chances when the play is open, because he's not looking over his shoulder. I think you have to give the staff a lot of credit for that.
Over 7 games, Owen has only thrown interceptions in 2 of them this season.
Yeah, so that's why the FAU game was weird, because like it hasn't been a problem, and FAU wasn't doing anything crazy on defense,
But without that bread loaf, that was his first interception, and there's a couple drop passes and there were a couple of overthrows. But gosh, Jared, if a couple of those go the right way, if half of them go the right way, yeah, we're looking at a potentially 500-yard game from Owen. You want to talk about revisionist history? This is easily a 500-yard game from Owen McCown. But yeah, dude, I mean, he's doing all the right things. So just keep doing it. Keep it up.
Yeah, and he continued to run the ball well. Didn't get as many yards as he did against Rice, but I thought he did a good job of extending play, picking up some first downs with his feet. It's easy to forget that was a huge part of UTSA's offense under Frank Harris, right? I think mentally, myself included, we think back of like, oh, that easy pitch and catch to Josh and Zakari. There was always a first down on the field to be had. But I think in reality, if you go back and watch all of those games, Frank ran for a lot of first downs when there was nothing else there. So to see Owen take that on himself and start to pick those up is huge. I think it's a big reason why the third down conversion rate has improved so much, like you mentioned earlier in the episode.
Yeah.
But, I think also the offensive line was pretty poor in run blocking. They really didn't move anyone off the line of scrimmage. The running backs, I don't know. I mean, I feel like if you take out the 2-3 long carries from Brandon High and Robert Henry, it was probably like 1 yard per carry or 2 yards per carry or something like that. But I thought the pass protection was pretty good. And when you consider the injuries on the offensive line, again, sick of saying that, a new starting 5 lineup again, Ben Rios, retro sophomore, making his first start, they were pretty good. Ben in particular played great. I was really happy. When I saw that he was starting, I started watching pretty closely in that first quarter, and I'm like, oh man, he's actually playing pretty well. And then when I went back to do my film breakdown and I really watched him closely, I'm like, he's kind of kicking ass out there. I wasn't sure how those Central Catholic guys were going to develop, but both of those guys have proven to, at minimum, be quality depth pieces, which is more than I thought we were going to get, right, last year when they weren't really seeing playing time.
And Rios just might be a starter. Look, this is another underclassman, Jared, sophomore, Ben Rios. Also local, yes, we love that. But again, we go back to play the kids, play the youth. They've got it. They can do it.
Dude, the thing with Rios, like when I'm watching him and I'm comparing him to the rest of the offensive line, is he's just in better shape, man. Like he's much more slender because he's like 6'6", 290 or something like that, which probably a little bit undersized. He probably could be a little bit bigger, but he's not 345 pounds, right? On his pull blocks, he can move just fine. He keeps a really low pad level. He keeps chopping his feet through his block. Like he finishes his blocks. Owen McCown had a couple of first down pickups where Ben Rios was in pass protection in front of him and like just kind of took his defender, across the pocket, right? And opened up a big hole for Owen to step up into. Like that's really veteran savvy stuff. And it only works when you have an offensive lineman that's athletic enough to keep up with the defender, right? Because it's really easy to be like, oh, I'm going to take this guy out of the play, but then they get the best of you and they've got a clear path to the quarterback. So if you keep your feet moving, you can make plays like that. It's really cool to see Ben do that. And, I hope he sticks there. We know that Vinley Tatafu's out for the year now, so plenty of playing time to be had. And I think what we saw from Ben in that game, for me, is enough for him to continue to hold down that starting spot over, Demetrius Allen or someone like that.
And that's the play that you broke down on your film room, correct?
Yeah.
Where Ben Rios opens up that rushing lane.
Yeah,
beautiful stuff. And remember, folks, on Patreon, if you're a Patreon subscriber, you get access to Jared's film room every single week, breaking down the highlights and lowlights from.
Dude, that FAU one was a long one. That's like maybe the most plays I've broken down in a single film breakdown this year, which is a good sign. Right?
The first time you were looking forward to doing the film room.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. I know.
Jared made his
so
little cup of
check that out
Joe
for
and
sure.
he locked himself up in that lavatory. He just had himself a
Yeah.
fun Sunday afternoon, man.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Adrian, we've talked a lot
Offensively,
about the offense. The defense
yes,
was really
Jared.
the star of the show here.
We've got to say, look, just outside of the Houston Christian game, this is the highest scoring and yardage output from UTSA's offense. But yes, all credit goes
Yeah.
to the defense for allowing the offense to get it done today, Jared. I think we've got to start with the ferocious pass rush. 7 sacks on the day from UTSA's defense. 7.
Tied a school record for sacks in a game. And Adrian, what's really cool about that statistic? Well, two things. First off, they had a very mobile quarterback in Cam Francher. There were several plays where they really had him dead to rights in the pocket. He was able to escape. So they could have easily set the school record with a less mobile quarterback. But second of all, my favorite part about that is it wasn't like there was one guy that had 3 sacks. Those sacks were spread out across the entire defense, right? And I think Jamori Robinson really led the way with his ability to create pressure and cause, Fancher to step up in the pocket and stuff like that. But you just saw it coming from all over, right? Bryce Grays at Moneybacker had a sack. Owen Peavy, I think, had a sack. David Martin, the cornerback, came off the edge and had a sack. So that was great to see. And then, you saw the big guys protecting the rushing lanes on the interior as well. Like when that pressure got to the edge and the quarterback was going to step up, they ran into Jamie Buxton was there. Brandon Brown was there.
Buxton,
so that gap sophomore discipline, that gap discipline is a really hard thing to have when you're blitzing, especially against the mobile quarterback. And I don't want that to be taken for granted because that's very impressive stuff from UTSA's defense, especially considering all the youth that's on the field, right? When you're a young guy, you want to go out there, you want to make a big play, you want to make a big splash. So for them to stay disciplined and stay true to their assignment was very impressive.
Say it, Jared. Say the words.
Play the kids.
Play the kids. Play the kids, yo. But yeah, man, I think you make a good point. Look, Mancher gave us more problems than we anticipated. Would you agree?
Yeah. What up with that turf toe, man? Like,
yeah, well, he was supposed to be out. He was questionable.
What in the world? Dude, I feel like, was that a ruse? Like, did Tom Herman just make that up? Because he played to the end of the game against North Texas. Like, you never saw him get hurt in that game. Very, very weird. I don't know. I'm going to have to call BS moves on the turf toe thing.
Chess moves from Tom. Yeah, I don't know, man. Maybe so. Maybe so. But yeah, really, a really good day from UTSA's defense. And then, we also got our share of turnovers as well. So you had a takeaway through the air with an interception, and then you got a fumble off of FAU as well. You hold them to just 203 total yards on the day. You hold them to 4 for 14 on third downs. They don't even have the football for 25 minutes of possession. It's astounding that they were able to score 24 points. The only reason they scored 24 points because they had a lot of really short field to work with a couple of times.
Do you know off the top of your head what the record or what the streak is now for turnovers created in a game? Is it 17 games under Jeff Traylor that they've had a turnover? It's something like that. It's approaching the 20s.
Well, because we had a drought at the beginning of, wasn't it last season? Did we have a turnover drought?
Yeah, I think so.
We couldn't get an interception until week 5 or 6, and then it finally came, and then
now it's.
So I don't know. I don't know if we had fumble. I don't know if we had any fumbles or if that broke the streak at any point. But there's like a
they had a fumble recovery. Cyrus Simon had the strip sack in the red zone. That was a huge play.
Oh yeah, no, they had an interception and they had a fumble recovery this week.
Mm-hmm. Who had the pick? I don't remember the pick. Oh, Owen Peewee did the game. Owen
Peewee.
Yeah, sick catch.
And then
they might have to put him in on offense, man.
yeah, that was the dagger, the game winner, the sealer, right? Yeah, but it counts, garbage time or not. Yeah, it was an impressive catch. But UTSA defense, unbelievable game, really, really unbelievable game. Yeah, minus Fancher getting away from that stupid quarterback scramble that he ended up taking.
Let's talk about that one. That was not a scramble. That was a designed quarterback draw, and that was
a design draw.
Yeah, perfect play call for FAU, man. set the school record for FAU for longest quarterback rush in school history,
Oh my
which is wild.
gosh.
And
What went wrong? What happened?
yeah. So UTSA sent the blitz, right? They blitzed, I think, Donye off the edge as the money backer and one of the inside linebackers as well. So that left just Martavius French as the really only person that would have been in position to make a play, and he took a bad angle on it. Just typical mismatch, right? Football play calling, it's a game of chess, right? And there are sometimes like rock paper scissors, right? And sometimes it's left with just one guy's got to make a play, and if you beat that one guy, it's going to be a big play, and that's exactly what happened there. Francher obviously did not have a serious injury because he was really moving, but it's disappointing to see French not be able to get in position to make that play. And I think the safeties got thrown off too. I think they probably ran some long decoy routes out there. It's hard to tell from the TV broadcast, obviously, but just I wouldn't say a lucky play call from FAU, but I don't think UTSA anticipated having much of a running threat from Francher. So I think having some of those really aggressive and risky blitzes may have caught them by surprise, because I think all of us expected a different quarterback, or, if Francher did play, he would be a kind of statue back there in the pocket. Just like we saw when Frank Harris had his turf toe injury. Like, they were not running him. Like, he was just sitting back there and slinging that thing. So, yeah, it is what it is. But it's crazy that FAU only had 203 yards of offense, and that single play was like, what, 75 yards?
76 yards. Yeah. Which, by the way, that play, I mean, like, completely floors every UTSA fan on the planet whenever that happens, because UTSA gets 2 3-and-outs on FAU's opening 2 offensive drives. We go downfield. We don't get into the end zone, but it's like a beautiful offensive drive, really drawn out, like 15 or 16 plays downfield. Take off like half of the first quarter, end up getting a field goal. It's like everything's looking like, oh, are we putting it together? Are we putting it together? And then it's 3rd and 6. And Andrew runs 76 yards and scores a touchdown. And like, at that point, I'm ready to turn it off. I'm like, oh, here we go. We're going to get smoked.
Yeah,
here we go again.
Yeah.
Another week of inept football. But no, we held it together. Thank goodness. We actually scored on the very next drive. And we scored pretty quick. We answered pretty quick. If I recall correct.
Yeah, it just goes back to what I said at the top of the episode. I mean, responding to the adversity was really impressive for UTSA. And so a team the season's not gone the way that you want or how you expected, right? So to still have that kind of resolve, it was very impressive for sure. A few other things I'll call too. We mentioned Davin Martin got his first start, and he actually didn't grade that highly on PFF, but I thought he played pretty well. I really don't remember him giving up a pass. And, maybe he didn't play that many snaps. I don't know. But really cool to see another young guy that's super athletic make an impact early, right? It's super encouraging because, UTSA brought some transfers in at that position. And, injuries, again, I think have kind of forced him into the rotation. So to see him step up and kind of claim his moment with that sack was very, very cool.
Jeff Traylor, through these 2 conference losses, kind of continued to downplay the severity of the issues that the Roadrunners were having. He was very adamant that these were small mental lapses. The culture was strong. We are very, very close. We just have a couple things that we need to fix or clean up. These things are just so egregious. The issues are just so egregious. It's just hard to believe that was actually the case. Thought the culture was gone. Thought that we were going to deal with mental lapses and bonehead penalties all throughout the season. But I guess Traylor was, in fact, right, Jared. UTSA able to clean it up so quick. And penalties has to be the main thing that we point at from this FAU game. A team that has been just horrendous committing penalties. And even in AAC play, you had 16 penalties against Rice, which I believe also tied a program record. You had 12 penalties against ECU. And then if you go back, you had 10 penalties against Texas State. You had 10 penalties against Kennesaw State. Only 5 on the day, Jared, from UTSA. And that was such a relief to finally be able to see that.
5 penalties, and 2 of them were the same one of running into the punt returner with no fair catch.
Still boneheaded, but
at
half of the quantity, I'll take it.
At least it's something different, and those are bang plays too, so definitely not as bad as roughing the passer and just some of the other stuff. At least it's a different problem, and hopefully one that's easier to fix for sure. It was pretty interesting. They said that they were banning the word penalties from the race facility, and I mean that's a super Jeff Traylor approach, but it worked, dude. I mean, he does all this corny stuff, and it just works. It's crazy to me,
We don't say the word penalties. We don't acknowledge them. They do not exist in our practice facility. Yeah, man, incredible. Like this is the first edition of like 2024 high level mind tactic coaching approach of Jeff Traylor. He has one of these every single year.
Yeah, the cheese,
the mousetrap, printing out tweets and printing out tweets and taping them to the back of seats in meeting rooms. Like he always does stuff like this, man.
Mm-hmm.
And penalties. Yeah, you get sent to timeout. You get sent to a corner if you say penalties in the race facility, and it tends to work. I think also, Jared, big picture, what it does for this team's psyche, what it does for this team's spirit, for their heart to win a football game together, to win a hard football game together. They hadn't done it. Not really quite yet this season. Kennesaw State, HCU don't really count. Sorry, not for the UTSA Roadrunners. They finally get to pull out a big win together, and this rush of emotion, jubilance, you get the monkey off of your back. You have to imagine, just for the confidence of this team going forward, that like you really cannot quantify the intangible of winning a game together finally in this construction of the team and the roster. What that does for this team's confidence is tremendous. It's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't want to jump too far ahead though, right? They've got to sustain it, right? They played fairly clean, good football. We saw big plays from young guys, but it can't just be an isolated success, right? They need to go on the road to Tulsa, do it again, because they have to play even more clean and even better. Because if they want to go to bowl game, they got to beat one of North Texas, Memphis, or Army. All three of those guys, I mean, the performance against FAU probably is not enough to beat those teams.
No.
Right now, those teams are much better than UTSA, right? So we're seeing the stepping stones. Even in the losses to ECU and Rice, there was still some positive stuff there that showed progression for the team. FAU, it starts to click a little bit. It all comes together. You get rid of the penalty problem, but it's still not enough, right? And I think a part of the reason why there's so much jubilance from the FAU win is because we reset our expectations and we lowered them. But the team that we saw against FAU was good. It was improved, but it's not the team that they were supposed to be this year. Even in spite of the injuries, right? It still wasn't enough.
Correct. We're still not there, but we are getting closer. And the progress has been slow, but it has been progress, tangible progress nevertheless. Jared, UTSA has not won a road game yet in 2024. Tulsa is the one that the Roadrunners have got to get in order to have a puncher's chance at a 500 record in bowl invitation.
Some final thoughts
on FAU?
Yeah, some final thoughts for me. Tate Sandell had a great game. Dude's got a really strong leg. Nailed some big kicks. Let's not
41-yarder.
Yep.
Had a 41-yarder last week. I think had a 53-yarder. The dude is money, but was 3 for 3 against FAU. Yes. Good. Thank you for the shout out. Almost forgot. Yep. Kind of like how our media forgot to ask Jeff Traylor about it in the post-game presser. He kind of pounded the table and yelled Tate Sandell's name at him.
Put some respect on his name. Yeah.
Put some respect on Tate Sandell's name. Yeah, we've got to come up with an awesome nickname for him. We always have really good nicknames for our incredible place kickers. It looks like our place kicking dynasty is back under Tate Sandell. The Sandel, Tate the Chancla,
the golden Sandel.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
the golden chancla. Yeah, do whatever.
Dude,
we'll figure it out.
You threw him again, dude. They benched a senior, put a redshirt sophomore in. He kicks a 52-yard field goal. Right?
What are you gonna do? Come on.
What are you gonna say? What are you gonna say, Adrian? Say it.
Play the kids. 5 for 6 this year on field goals. 9 for 9 on the extra points. Incredible stuff from Tate Sandell.
Speaking of the kids, shout out to the student section. Man, it's been a bad year for UTSA. 2-4. Some of those kids have never seen a losing UTSA program through their time as a fan and a student, and they had a great showing on homecoming. They stayed pretty much till the end, from what I could tell. 21,000 was a much higher attendance number than I thought. I'm sure the actual number of butts and seats was lower, but it was not a terrible attendance or an embarrassing one by any means.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
that was great to see. And I want to give a special shout out to the two guys in the front row. FAU scored a touchdown and came into the student section to talk a little mess. And those guys were giving them the business, baby.
Business, dog. And
I'm pretty sure that was the last time those fellas got into the end zone the whole rest of the game. So shout out to those students. We salute you.
Yeah,
I hope you're listening.
They didn't want any more problems with that UTSA student section. Did you see how many Tulsa players? Did you see how many Tulsa players had to come and back up their boy from them UTSA students? It was out of control. There's one guy in particular, man. He had glasses on, and this dude, like, whole entire torso was hanging over the wall, like finger points in the face mask. That dude, he's a legend. I want his name. I want to get him on the pod. So much respect to that guy. That is a true fan. Front row student section UTSA. You better watch your ass, opposing teams traveling to the Alamo Dome, because we got something for you. Would it be the very first time some students got removed from the dome in handcuffs from the turf, dude? Going back to the inaugural game. Strong tradition here at UTSA.
Shout out Rowdy Ryan.
Shout out Rowdy.
When's the last time Rowdy Ryan got mentioned on a podcast? It's been years.
Damn, dog.
Wonder what he's up to these days. Yeah. Any other last thoughts on your part for FAU win?
No, I'm really glad you shouted out the student section. Fantastic stuff from him. I do think we had a listener that had some thoughts from FAU that we wanted to share with everyone.
I'm going to do a couple Patreon shout outs, and we'll send you guys off with a voicemail before we get into the Cumbia break and the Tulsa preview. So I want to say thanks as always to our Board of Trustees members on Patreon. Patreon chat just continues to be flying all throughout the season. It's been a lot of fun. So if you're not a patron, hope you'll join us over there in the chat. Shout out to Digiteek, John Otwell, Gary and Ruben representing the UTSA Bird Gang Tailgate, Ray Redding at Mimi Apparel, Brandon Grill and the Grail Realty Group, Andy Elizada at Proficient Benefit Solutions, Ian McClendon at Secret LLC, Javon Townsend, president of the DFW chapter of the UTSA Alumni Association, Ryan Squares, Water Construction, UTSA Annual Giving, Artisan Vapor and CBD, and Wayne Gonzalez and the Roadrunners Rising Project. So like I said, we'll play you guys off with a voicemail. Really great stuff from Two Name Mindframe, and we'll see you guys back after the Cumbia break to preview the Tulsa Golden Hurricane.
Hey, what's up? It's Two Name Mindframe. I have some thoughts on the game here. It was nice. It had some times where it really pissed me off, as usually happens, but overall, I saw a team there that could have folded, and just didn't. And I know that sounds pretty, like a low bar there, but losing what we lost last year and coming back here with a whole new quarterback and our offensive line banged up, I have to start there and just think, that is really, the leaders were gone. And a program at the G5 level, or any level really, but especially at the G5 level, is going to struggle when they have to replace someone like Frank Harris, especially, and Rashad Wisdom on defense and the offensive line, and just a whole bunch of transfers, a whole bunch of moving parts. It's just different at the level that we're at. And I really thought today was the first day we saw a legit pass rush. That was really fun to watch. I thought it was just incredible to see, and they had a fire in each step that I really hadn't seen them have at any other point this year. Absolutely dominant.
All right, guys, we're back to preview the Tulsa Golden Hurricane, and I always struggle with the Golden Hurricane because, like, if it's a mascot that's like not plural, it's singular. You know what I mean? Like, it just never feels right to me. Can't explain that. Like the Roadrunners, the Bobcats, like it's a group, it's a unit. But the Golden Hurricane, there's only one of them. Why is there only one? Right?
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. Those are things that keep me up at night.
The whole is greater than the sum of the part. What is it? That saying.
Industry.
I don't know, Jared. But the Golden Hurricanes, well, have resembled a hurricane, putting it lightly, on the field thus far this season. It has been rough for Tulsa, man. A 2-5, but very, very ugly 2-5.
Yeah.
Much uglier 2-5 than UTSA's 2-4 was just last week.
Yeah, I think so. They don't pass the eyeball test. I mean, you watch their film, and I feel like if you took the branding off the jerseys and you asked someone like what conference is this team in, they would probably say like the Southland and not the American. They're a very young team. Just have a lot of developing to do. Right, the guys look really slim, really slender. They have a lot of growth. Right, like literally physically. I think to get to where they need to be competitive in this league. And we had a great conversation with Ryan and Matt from the Golden Hurricast.
Golden.
Yeah, great dudes. And they made a good point that I was wondering myself too. Is like when Tulsa had when they fired Coach Montgomery and that position was open, like some of the names that were linked to that job were super exciting, right? Like Brendan Marion, who's the offensive coordinator at UNLV. Obviously, they've had an amazing season. He's one of the best coordinators in the country and has them playing at a super high level. And then GJ Kinney was like another reported finalist, and like obviously we've seen firsthand what he's done at Texas State. And regardless of the success, those guys were just like sexy offensive minds, right? Like put a lot of points on the board, play an exciting brand of football. And they got Kevin Wilson instead. Also an offensive coach. Has been an offensive coordinator at I think Oklahoma and Ohio State, but just doesn't bring that young, exuberant excitement that I think those other candidates got. So then you kind of compare that with how those two guys have gone on, past that Tulsa opportunity, and they compare like how the Golden Hurricane has looked on the field, where they're just like kind of boring, I guess. I think that also makes it a lot harder to swallow for the fan base because they kind of see what they could have had and what they ended up with. And there's a big delta there, I would say.
Kevin Wilson's second season as Tulsa's head football coach right now has a 6-13 record, 4-8 last year, 2-5 on the season. And I was shocked to hear the Golden Hurricast guys sort of be of the mind frame that he needs to go. And apparently a lot of Tulsa's fan base feels the same sentiment, that they are already sick and tired of Kevin Wilson and want him out of the door, which is just crazy to me to think that a school that is not like A&M and UT be ready to fire a coach after a season and a half. Like, you just don't see that at the G5 level. But there clearly is like a very large disdain, I think, from the fan base to Kevin Wilson. I don't know if it's his demeanor. Apparently he's a little bit more of an old school, old-fashioned head coach, not so much the player's coach, but a little bit more militant style of a head coach, a little more brash. So yeah, I mean, maybe that has something to do with it too, but it's not working right now. It's not working. The Kevin Wilson Tulsa experiment is not working. And so I don't know what the chances of that turning around are, but this season it looks highly unlikely, just based off of what Jared was saying, the resounding amount of youth on this football team. We talk about play the kids for UTSA. Well, Tulsa actually is playing all of their kids. All they have is underclassmen on their roster, and they are getting beat the hell up out there week by week. Only 22 points per game from Tulsa's offense scoring wise.
Yeah, and they put up like 65 plus against their FCS opponent too. So obviously that weighs pretty heavily on the point per game total. I think if you look at them just against G5 competition, it's probably not even in the 20s if I had to guess. So yeah, it's been rough, and they've really been on a brutal stretch here lately. They had a nice overtime win against Louisiana Tech in Ruston. That was a fun game. I watched that one. Came down to the wire, obviously, and won it on a walk-off field goal. But then the last three games, right, they got smoked by North Texas, just obliterated. Army did Army things to them, right? It was not pretty, as you can imagine. But then you're like, okay, well, we get some relief here. We're going to go play Temple now. And Temple is like one of the worst teams in America. So at least that'll be a bounce back performance. And they look terrible against Temple. They made Temple look good when we know that they're not. So I think those three have really broken the fan base's spirits quite a bit. And then, you think, oh, well, UTSA's down, maybe we'll have, a win against a kind of a name opponent, right? And then UTSA has to bounce back. So like, well, damn, like, I guess the season's kind of over before it really gets going. So yeah, they're just in a bad spot right now, and they desperately need to win. You think Temple would have been that opportunity for them, and they just didn't show up in that one.
Man, yeah, it's brutal. It really, really is brutal for Tulsa, man. So yeah, we got to learn a little bit about the team last night. I guess you got to start with the quarterback. That's Kirk Francis, who's a true freshman last season. Is he redshirt this year, Jared?
Yeah, I don't think he played in more than 4 games.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a local kid. He's from the Tulsa area, former walk-on. He had a very illustrious high school career. He put up like a ton of stats, but a really small guy, very slight. Definitely, he reminds me of that guy that Charlotte had that was there forever and like never really won any games, but he was like really tough and played forever and put up a lot of yards. You remember that? You know that guy I'm talking about? Like
I think I do.
Max Brown or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, he definitely wasn't a great quarterback, but like, you had to respect the hell out of him, right? Because he was,
you had to respect the fight.
No talent. Yeah, no talent around him, just constantly getting beat up, but just continued to show up every week and put up 250 passing yards, like, automatic. Kirk Francis really reminds me of that. Like, not super arm talent, not a crazy athlete on the run or anything like that, but he just keeps the offense humming along, and they don't have a whole lot at receiver for him to throw to and make big plays. So, I don't think he's the problem on that offense. I think it's probably more the offensive line and the receivers, but, he's not, I think he's like a plus player for them. I actually thought Cardell Williams, the guy that's like 3rd on the depth chart, was like the for sure future for them at quarterback. And I watched him play as a freshman last year. I'm like, oh, this kid's got the juice. He's going to lead Tulsa back to prominence and get him to bowl games and stuff like that. But, he still plays, but he's not even the backup. It's pretty surprising, honestly.
It is really surprising, man. Cardell Williams hails from my high school alma mater, Westfield Mustangs. Shout out. And I had the same impression watching him last year. They were a very, very, it was, in fact, I believe it was the Temple game. They just lost to Temple 2010, but last year they smoked Temple, and Cardell Williams like kind of had a field day that game when Temple came down to Tulsa. And I remember texting Jared in the middle of that game, and I was like, dude, Tulsa. And he was like, they look scary right now. I was like, glad we don't got to see them this year.
Yeah.
And that was all Cardell. It was all Cardell Williams.
Yeah. I remember watching that game too, because my nephew was born that day, and my brother, in true sicko fashion, had the game on in the delivery room. And I was sitting there and like, damn, like, can Tulsa hold on to this kid? Like, I thought he was going to go jump to a Power 4 school, and it's been the opposite. He got benched at Tulsa. Yeah, it's really interesting.
When we asked the Golden Hurricanes boys not to give up too much of what's behind the paywall, but why Kirk Francis over Cardell Williams, and it was Cardell Williams played a little bit too much of a Superman superhero ball, world beater kind of guy, and Kirk Francis had a higher floor, which goes to tell me that Cardell Williams, more electric, higher ceiling, but Kirk Francis more reliable, more dependable, going to do the right thing on a play-by-play basis and not get you in so many at-risk scenarios with turnovers.
Which I get, but like, when you're this bad and you got a kid that's talented, like, just let him take his lumps and get better, right?
Right. Put the electrifying talent out there and just let him just go play Superman ball and try to get a couple wins. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Well, we mentioned that they don't really have a lot of receiver. Camden Benjamin is like the only guy there, and he's, as far as production goes, he's one of the top receivers in the country just because he gets so many targets, right? They're constantly throwing to him. I think I read that he was like 4th in the American, like 23rd in the country in receiving yards or something like that. So you pretty much have to double cover him just because they're going to throw in his direction all the time. Really good player for them, but not too much else besides him at receiver. So it'll be interesting to see how UTSA schemes for that. Like, I imagine you're going to float a safety over on his side of the field every play.
Yeah, they don't even like try to go to other receivers. Camden Benjamin has 42 receptions on the year, and the next leading receiver is Grayson Tempest, sophomore, with 11 catches on the year. 42 to Camden Benjamin, 11 to the next target. That's crazy. We
Mhm.
are also starting to see them utilize their young tight ends in the passing game to the same degree that UTSA is. They've got 2 sophomore tight ends in Luke McGarry and Connor Vaughn that are seeing a lot of, well, in comparison to Camden Benjamin's 42, are seeing a decent share of balls being thrown their way.
Mhm. Yeah, and they throw to the running back quite often. Like Anthony Watkins, he's probably one of the big bright spots for them on offense. He's a really good player. He's got 7 catches for 120 yards, right? So they're
Yeah.
definitely not afraid to throw it to him out of the backfield. And that's something they've been doing a lot recently. Like as the season's kind of progressed for them, or regressed. I mean, however you want to view it, they're starting to do that more often, right? So they're keeping the ball, close to the line of scrimmage. They're not really pushing the ball downfield and challenging teams vertically. So I think like those outside linebackers for UTSA are going to have to be very disciplined and make sure that they're keeping outside contained and making tackles, at the line of scrimmage or even behind it.
Anthony Watkins is the 3rd leading receiver by way of yardage for Tulsa. So yes,
Yeah.
they've also got one of the best wide receiver last names I've ever seen in my life, with sophomore wide
They've
receiver
got some great names on this roster.
Zion Steptoe, wide
Nice.
receiver, sophomore. Beautiful. But Anthony Watkins definitely a threat. And they don't hand the ball off very often. He only has 61 carries on the year. It's less than 10 carries per game. But he does get you about 4.5 yards per carry whenever he does run the ball. And they've got a junior running back in Bill Jackson, who actually gets you a little bit larger gashes whenever he touches the ball.
Yeah, speaking of names, they've got some really good ones on the offensive line. They've got Walter Young-Bear, has played the most snaps for them at guard. And they
so
have a
good.
tackle. Yeah, this is even better. They got a tackle named Brody Duffel. It's good stuff.
Oh, fantastic, man.
Yeah,
That's
their offensive
fantastic.
line, man, those guys don't look the part. They're very, very young, very, very skinny, not very strong. I think to me that's UTSA's biggest matchup advantage in this game is UTSA's defensive line and outside linebackers against Tulsa's offensive line. In fact, I think their best offensive lineman was a redshirt freshman. I think it was a tackle, just like left the team last week. So they're going to be pretty rough up front for the offensive line. So we just saw this past week, UTSA really take over a game with a pass rush with 7 sacks. So if they can kind of reproduce that performance this week against Tulsa, the defense should have a really, really nice showing.
Very much so. What about Tulsa's defense? How do they look on the other side of the ball?
Yeah, the first thing that jumped out to me is just the amount of like drop zone coverage they play. Right, they pretty often will have both of their inside linebackers drop back into coverage. They don't blitz as much as I think like most teams in the American tend to do. And I think a lot of that is try to help out their secondary. They're, again, super, super young back there. They've had a lot of injuries, so a lot of freshmen at cornerback and safety. Some of those guys have been okay, but overall, they've really, really struggled back there to defend against the pass. I think that has a big part to do with them giving up a lot of like early down conversions. So like their third down metrics aren't that bad, but that's because a lot of teams aren't even getting to third down because like they're getting so much chunk yardage that they're getting first downs on first and second down and not having to really grind out a drive against Tulsa. So there should be a lot of opportunity through the air. And I think also when they drop that coverage, that's when we want to see Owen McCown continue to show his willingness and propensity to run the football, because those things should be open for nice like 5-6 yard gains, right? When those linebackers are dropping back. They've got some good players on defense though. Up front, they have Owen Ostrowski. Is a guy that I've had my eye on for a while. I think he's a really good player. His dad was actually an All-American in Tulsa, which is a pretty cool story. They wear the same number. I think it's number 55. But he's a good player.
Wow.
Good pass rusher. Really athletic. Really solid kid. They just need a few more Owen Ostrowskis for sure. They need an Owen Ostrowski version in the secondary, and they'd really be cooking. But they also have an inside linebacker, Gavin Potter, as well. So he transferred from Arkansas State, but he originally played quite a bit at Kansas out of high school. And so he's probably been the most productive player for them, or maybe the most disruptive for them. He's got 8.5 tackles for loss on the year. Another guy that does pass the eyeball test, right? He's a guy that looks like what a Tulsa linebacker should look like. But on the offensive side of the ball, like those guys they don't look the part. You know what I mean? So those two guys are definitely the names to look out for, and they've got some good players on that defensive line as well.
Okay.
Their special teams are good.
Oh.
Yeah, they've got a really good
solid
place kicker, Seth Morgan.
Yeah. Solid. They're giving up about 150 yards per game on the ground and about 270 through the air on a weekly basis. So it does look like, I don't know, UTSA can have like the balance, a pretty balanced attack, rushing versus passing. I feel like Tulsa's defense is definitely their stronger unit. When you look at like defense versus offense, neither of them are great, but I think Tulsa's defense has a better chance at slowing down UTSA than Tulsa's offense has at scoring on UTSA. I fully anticipate UTSA's defense to have an absolute, maybe field day is a stretch, but after 7 sacks against FAU, maybe it's not. I expect the defense to be completely dominant against Tulsa. We should see that. I can't imagine, Tulsa goes out there and breaks even 20 points if the defense can have a pass rush performance like they did against FAU.
I don't know, man. If they free Cardell Williams and let him cook, who knows?
Will they? What are the chances?
No, probably not. So
Cardell,
from a physicality, athleticism standpoint, UTSA is going to have no problem in this game, right? They've got better athletes, they've got better depth, even with all the injuries. They have a lot of guys, on their team that probably started the season third, fourth, maybe not even on the depth chart. That would for sure be starters at Tulsa, but that's also been the case in other games this year, right? I think against Rice there were a lot of mismatches that UTSA had that didn't take full advantage of. But my concern is not with like how good are these players compared, across the line of scrimmage or whatever, but it's just like, can UTSA play clean football 2 weeks in a row, right? We haven't seen anything to indicate that they can sustain that. We've got one good performance where they avoided penalties and, minimize the mental mistakes. But to do that 2 weeks in a row, and this time you do it on the road, I'm kind of in a wait and see mode. So I don't have any concern really that UTSA is going to drop this game, but I think like the line is only 8 points for a reason. And I think that's an indictment on UTSA, right? Because Temple just beat them by 10 points and Vegas has only given UTSA 8. And I know it's on the road, but still, I mean, UTSA should be a 25-point favorite in this game. If we're just looking at the rosters, yeah. So that's really my concern, right? Is can UTSA play mentally the way they played against FAU? Physically,
and
they're good.
We tend to think that because they corrected it last week, it's fixed now. But that's not necessarily the case at all.
Didn't we think that after the Houston Christian game?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, also a game that was played at home in the Alamodome where UTSA doesn't lose, undefeated on the year.
And look, let's keep it real, man. Well, like everyone's excited about the young players. They made big plays. They played great, but they're young players. They're going to make mistakes, right? I mean, we just made that point with Jamil Hardy, right? He's looking very special. I think he's going to be a key part of this offense for years to come. But he had a play against Rice where he cost UTSA a drive. And he had the first down, didn't take it, ran backwards, tried to make a bigger play, caused a turnover. So
you can afford some of those mistakes. You can afford some of those mistakes against Tulsa. You certainly cannot afford them against Memphis and UNT the following week when we get our homestand. I'm also a little bit surprised at the 54-point total from Vegas as well, Jared. It feels pretty crazy for Tulsa averaging 22 points per game, and UTSA cannot be too much higher than that. I don't have it right in front of me, but I imagine it's got to be in that mid-20. It's 25 points per game from UTSA. 22 for Tulsa. I'd be shocked if this thing was threatening a 60-point score total. But yeah, Jared, score prediction.
Before I give it, I do want to say that UTSA's got to make sure they keep the ball away from Floyd Avant. He's number 6 in the country in yards per return, so just don't kick it to him. Just kick it out of the end zone. Yeah. Score prediction. I don't know. I kind of struggle with that one. I do think we're going to see a bit sloppier UTSA than we saw last week.
Mm.
But I think they're going to
The-
win. I think the defense will
Is
play
it-
well.
Is it because we're on the road? Is it because of the emotion of the win? Is it just
All the
don't have the
above.
faith in 2 in a
All
row?
the above.
Okay.
I tend to believe, like, if you see the same team through 6 games, that's who they are.
That's who
right?
they are.
Like,
That's who they are.
It's rare to see like a complete turnaround where a team looks completely different in week 12 than they looked in week 6. Right? It happens sometimes, but I think this is going to be a team that continues to make mistakes and struggle with penalties. So, I think something like UTSA 31, Tulsa 20 feels about fair to me.
We are extremely close. We're extremely close. I have UTSA 32. I have Tulsa 18. I think that Tulsa's pretty broken as far as being a functional football team, and I don't think there's a very much spirit there either playing underneath Kevin Wilson. I think UTSA is riding high coming out of this. I do think there's going to be some emotional setback probably that comes with that, but I do think they're going to look sharper on the road than they have previously on the road. Perfect game, not by any means, but UTSA, by way of talent and because of how much they improved against FAU, I'm confident that they're going to handle Tulsa fairly handily. So give me 32-18. That would be 2 back-to-back 14-point victories for UTSA. Sounds crazy, but they can pull it off against Tulsa, and they ought to.
Well, I'm looking forward to the game. I mean, I think we're going to continue to see these young players show up and make big plays, even though I see that they're probably going to have some struggles too. But, I'm excited again to watch this team and see the future, grow up in front of us. Probably what the season should have been all along as far as expectation goes, but, that's fine. We'll reset and move forward. And, I think it'll be a good one.
UTSA, a win against Tulsa puts them at 500 in the AAC and 500 overall on the season. It is on ESPN Plus at 2:30 p.m. this Saturday, folks. So make sure you're tuned in, and may the Roadrunners give us a reason to make the road trip to go see us play against Memphis on ESPN2 Saturday morning. All right, Jared, I really appreciate it. Before we sign off, have to give an enormous shout out to the big money donors, Mr. Ben Tovar, the Bunch family, Zach Espericueta, and the San Antonio Podcast Network, Alejandro Benavides, Dan Nerdahl, our host of Around the Bird Bath podcast, Jacob Cavazos, board president for the UTSA Alumni Association, John Nally, Rick Cortez of Rowdy Road Grillers, Sumner McDaniel, UTSA King Bowser, Maddie, and Home Field Apparel, where you can shop vintage UTSA Roadrunners gear, and you can save 15% if you use our discount code UTSA Wants Home Field.
Awesome. Thank you guys. And we got a bonus episode coming this week. We had Ryan and Matt on from the Golden Hurricane. So if you want to hear more about Tulsa, about Kevin Wilson, all that good stuff, be sure to check it out. We went on their podcast as well. So go subscribe to them if you haven't. They have a great podcast. They cover all sports at Tulsa. Really one of the podcasts that we've kind of built our coverage model at Alamo Audible around. So if you're a fan of us, you'll be a fan of them. Definitely go check it out. And we'll see you guys back next week or on Patreon if you're a subscriber.